So I'm just going to admit a few more people that are in the waiting room. Again, for those just joining, we're just getting started right now. It's about 7:37, so we've gone a little bit past the start of 7:30. My apologies for those that are on a strict time. My name is Omar Passons. We're just getting ready to get started here. I'm a deputy city manager for the city of San Jose, and my focus is on preventing and ending homelessness and enhancing quality of life for all San Jose residents, housed and unhoused. I joined the city last month on June 13th from my former role in the county of San Diego, where I did similar work, focused on similar issues. I mentioned to several of you, I'm joined today by Jim Ortball, a former deputy city manager who is working again with the city and is really the lead on the production of the emergency and interim communities that we're going to talk about. And there's a reason why we distinguish between that and sort of the notion of tiny homes or the sort of small little almost shed-like structures, because those are really not what we're talking about here. But again, we'll get into all of that as we move on. So I mentioned, just for other folks, just for your awareness, from Council Member David Cohen's office, Chief of Staff Stacy Brown is here. Also, I believe we're joined by Hugo Jimenez from the Berryessa School Board. So just wanted to make sure to mention that. And for those that tend to use the chat feature, I will just mention to you, I'm flying solo. Most of our time tonight will be focused on answers to questions that we have to get from you, and then also comments and questions that you have. I'm going to start though with a few things. The first is, look, our primary goal tonight is not to make anybody feel bad about their views or their opinions. We're not here either as staff and hopefully as neighbors in the community. This isn't a chance to say, oh, well, you shouldn't think what you think, or that's not the right way to look at this, or this kind of thing. There are some pieces of information that we'll provide because we want everybody to have the same starting point, and we'll listen. And I think one of the things that we'd just like to ask is, some of your neighbors have expressed varying perspectives on this topic, on homelessness generally, on solutions, and on ways to help, on where those might be. And so a big part of our conversation will be listening to one another. And so I just ask that we listen respectfully to one another, even if it gets emotional. This can be a charged topic, and I understand that. The other thing I want to mention is, it would have been better had we been able to come to the community and have these conversations before tonight. I want to acknowledge that up front. We are sorry that did not happen, and we are here, and the council has extended the time by quite a lot for us to have these conversations and to solicit input on alternative sites. So I wanted to say that up front as we go to get started. So with that, I'm just going to move into our presentation, if I can. There we go. So again, for those that joined relatively recently, this is only going to be about 10 minutes, and then most of it will be a sort of questions, answers, that kind of thing. But we just want to get to a common set of circumstances. So the first point I want to just reemphasize is that homes end homelessness, and services when they're needed. We need more of those homes, especially for those who make very little money. A single adult who makes a minimum wage of almost $33,700, or the high end of a senior on SSDI that makes about $13,200. Those people are at the lowest end of the income scale, and there are not places in San Jose, by and large, that they can afford. That means we have both a housing crisis and a homelessness crisis. Affordable places to live are an essential part of the story, but some people will want and need physical or behavioral health care, like substance use or mental health support. Some people may say they don't want any help initially, and they may say that many times in a row, and we can talk about why that may be. And also that in reality, many people actually change their mind after a time. That said, our focus and the time that we have together is on another set of solutions. Most of our time together will be spent talking about temporary solutions. So not for homelessness necessarily, but for security, safety, hygiene, right? Cleanliness, connection to services, basic peace for everyone, while being focused ultimately on the ultimate goal of that permanent home. That's what these interim housing options are. Today, my hope is really to do three things. Inform the scope of the need, the actions of elected leaders, the site selection process, right? And even what interim housing is and what it does. Second, we want to engage, right? We will spend most of this time, as I mentioned before, we got started a little bit late at about 7:37, but we'll spend most of our time together with us listening and you talking. It doesn't seem that way now, but trust me, within the next 10 minutes, this will pivot quite a bit. We just want to have a common set of understanding. And third, at the very end, we'll just talk about notify. We want you to know what the future options are for public meetings, for continuing to be engaged. And frankly, we want to know also what are other ways that we can sort of stay engaged and make sure you get the notification that you need. So this homelessness crisis that requires urgent action, what are we really going to talk about, right? Understanding that crisis, right? We will spend, sorry, I just need to admit a few more folks. It will be important as we move through this process, right? To understand why we even need these options, wherever they end up in your community. As a reminder, the council had a couple of directions that we'll get into a bit later, but part of those directions was to go to the community and get additional site alternative selections. And so you'll find that we actually spend a fair amount of time asking about those things today. So what about the mayor and council actions? The second piece that we want to cover is that there have been a few specific actions by our elected leadership, and we want you to know what those are. There's a link if you want to read them in depth and get history, and we'll actually try to ask one of our colleagues to pop that link in the chat. It's a website that we stood up that has a sort of history and documentation and things of that sort, a place for you to insert site alternatives if you want to do that. We'll go a little bit about what the site selection process is, and again, what those EIH actually are, what an emergency interim home actually is. And then again, we'll spend the bulk of the time, probably another 6-7 minutes or so, on questions getting your answers to questions, hearing questions that you have. And then we'll talk about what happens next. So that first piece, inform, and this is really an important point. There are, over 5,000 people who are living outside, unsheltered in the city of San Jose. So even after you factor in the housing that exists for people, the temporary housing that's sort of dedicated for homelessness, there's still this really intense need. And one of the things to be mindful of is that this number, while very, very high, has actually gone down in part because of solutions like these very emergency interim housing communities that we're here to talk about. One of the questions that we get an awful lot is, was there even a plan? Do we have a strategy for what is happening? And the answer to that question is yes. For those that are just joining a little bit more late to the session, my name is Omar Passons. I'm with the city of San Jose. We are talking about, this is a community engagement session focused on the emergency interim housing communities. The council took action earlier. I'm joined by Jim Ortball, also from the city of San Jose. We're just going through about 6-7 more minutes of some presentation slides to give us all a common understanding, and then we'll pivot into your chances. And when we get to that stage, just as a reminder, everybody, I see folks are muted. Thank you for that. We'll just ask you when we get there to just raise hands, and then I will make notes of who has the questions, and we'll make sure to just move forward through that process as we have the questions and answers. Now back to where we were in terms of the strategy, right? People say, oh, is there a plan for our region? Well, Santa Clara County has a community plan to end homelessness that has been supported by, I think, 14 cities in the region, including the city of San Jose. The private sector has signed on. Nonprofit service providers. There's a backbone agency called Destination Home. It's a very robust set of partners, the County of Santa Clara and the Housing Authority, all very committed to these strategies. And it sets up what we're here to talk about. The first strategy, addressing those root causes, right? You hear people talk about prevention. Root causes of homelessness through system and policy change, an important strategy. The second strategy is also about prevention, right? Preventing people from ever experiencing homelessness. And then the third strategy, which is where we'll spend a lot of our time, basically all of our time today, and it's what gives the reason for why we're here today, is to improve quality of life for unsheltered individuals and create healthy neighborhoods for all, right? So what does that mean, right? What's happening with that strategy? Well, the answer is there have been several concrete steps, and that includes nearly 6,000 people in the last few years being housed. It includes over 2,100 people avoiding ever experiencing homelessness. This entire slide deck, the slide may be hard to read for you. You don't have to jot down numbers or anything like that. This will be added to the website, so along with this recorded presentation, so that you can share it with people. You can go back and see. You can find out sort of what we covered. For those that are just joining, again, Omar Passons, and we're just going through a few level setting slides before we get to the part that just opens up the conversation a bit. So what happened, right? We switched to informing about mayor and council actions. In 2017, the city council directed some initial site searches and development. That direction involved all 10 council districts. And this year, and this is sort of gets us to where we are, the city council in June actually had 2 additional points, right? Directed further action on several sites on June 21st, and then also clarified direction to us as staff to consider alternative sites within that same timeline. And that's a big part of why we're here, is that alternative site question. One of the things that's really important to know about this whole conversation as we round to the part that's a little more interactive is that this is really sharing a citywide responsibility. The mayor and council came forward and said, this is something that is part of our community as a whole. We are all gonna do our part, and called for these sites in all 10 locations, or all 10 council districts. That process is ongoing, right? 8 out of 10 districts either have a proposed location or actually have a built community that is up and running. And there were ongoing efforts to ensure a shared approach. The one thing I want to mention to folks, I know some folks have been admitted at different times. There's really just Jim and I. And so once we're done in about 6 minutes with this presentation piece, I won't be able to monitor the chat, but we will be allowing people to raise their hands in just a few more minutes when we get to the questions and answers. We've got a couple questions for you, and the second of those questions really creates space for your input, your feedback. Again, as I said at the very beginning, we are not here to try to convince you that one specific site is necessarily the right site to go. Okay, the council gave direction to come and solicit alternative sites, and we're going to do that, and we have done that, and actually, as I'll talk about a little later, have started already evaluating some of the sites that we've been getting in. So it is something that we are taking seriously. So one of the things I wanted to make sure to mention about one of the sites specifically is about Noble, right? So sort of northern, it's in Council District 4. I think it's important to know, right, that the council in 2017, it didn't prohibit sites near residents and schools. Those ended up being scoring factors. David Sampson, I'm actually gonna, even though I'm gonna hold off generally, I'm gonna go ahead and take this out of order in case there's some logistic issue. So David, can you go ahead and let's see if I can get you to unmute. For some reason I can't seem to unmute you, David. I apologize.
Hi, I don't have any question. I have a specific question for question and answer time. I have no logistical questions with what you're discussing now. I have a specific question when it's time.
Okay, very good. We'll just give us about 4 more minutes and we'll be
Thanks.
into that window a little bit. So, okay, so I just mentioned, so folks, I see some hands are going to start popping up. Just know that it'll be a little bit hard. I'll try to write down an order just to keep chance, but I will spend most of our time there. So the other thing I wanted to say though is that the prior recommended criteria was not what the city ultimately landed on, and not what's in use today. And there are reasons for that. But I think the point is, like, what changed? What changed is that the homelessness crisis got a lot worse. And the greater sense of urgency really has taken hold over the last couple of years. And then also there was a premium placed by our elected leadership on that rapid site identification and construction. And so that our team really took that premium to heart to go back and consider sites across the city. And the other thing I think that really bears just taking a moment on is in 2017, 2018, there were not existing emergency interim housing communities to look at, right? We didn't know what was actually going to happen when people were allowed to come in and get connected to these services and have the support and the peace and the safety and not have to, like, stash their belongings somewhere to go do things. Well, we've had a chance to see some of that, and we can talk a little bit more about that as things go on. But I wanted to just mention that those are some of the things that have really changed. Now, one of the things as we pivot a little bit here, and we're just about 3 minutes from switching over, is these are sites in this community, right? And we can talk a little bit about this, why this matters for people who are housed and people who are unhoused. These photos are they're unsafe. They're traumatic to live in, right? They're unclean. This is not what healthy neighborhoods for all. The people who are unhoused and having to live in this circumstance, or neighbors around them, right? That's not a healthy neighborhood, right? And so part of what this effort is about is going from, this to these. These are existing sites with people living in them right now who were formerly on the street. They're actually occupied. We're not having a theoretical argument or conversation anymore. We actually do know, right? And we have more information. So I wanted to share those. And in fact, I'm just trying to admit, there we go. Okay. And I want to try really quickly to see if this would work. And for those, I see someone's just joining. One Punch, if you could mute, please. Thank you so much. Real quickly, we got started a few minutes late, so I'm just a couple minutes in trailing. We're just getting to the engagement portion of the presentation. We just really wanted to have some level setting. I'm going to show a 46-second video, 2 more slides, and then we'll switch into a little more of an engaged format. Thank you for joining in, for participating, for signing in and listening in so far. We're going to start, by the way, when we get to the Q&A. I've got a question that I want to take people's feedback for. We'll still start with David, and pardon me, I think it's Shin, but forgive me if I've said that incorrectly. So I'm going to play this presentation. We've got just a couple more slides, and then we're going to start the sort of real engagement part. So let's just see. Again, for those just joining, this is only going to be about 40 seconds. This is an existing facility, emergency interim housing community. There are people living there right now. I have personally been to this site, and it's managed by Home First. So just wanted to give people a little bit of a snapshot that this is part of the reason that distinction between the tiny home language that may have existed about some units in the past and these sort of modular, quick build construction emergency interim units. So with that, I want to say, as we switch to hearing from the community, that these housing sites, in terms of around them, right? We're focused on making sure that they are clean with regular trash and upkeep service each week, both around and inside the community. that they're safe, right? Having a working quality relationship with SJPD according to the severity and risk of those calls, that they're secure. None of the sites that are open and have been operating for over a year have encampments that have sort of sprung up around them. There is a location where there were already people and already circumstances, but that's not a cause. That's a difference between cause and effect. And then support it. The staff to provide trauma-informed care and housing support and navigation. And as I mentioned, this is where we pivot. And I see that there are hands up, and this is what we're going to do, because I know folks have things that they want to ask and things that they want to say. So a couple of things to level set before we really jump in. One is, if I have an answer and I can give it to you, I will just do that. And if I don't, I'll tell you that, and I'll take a note, and we'll circle back with you tomorrow or the next day. We'll probably keep a running set of questions that we receive from these sessions. I won't have an answer necessarily to every question that folks have, but I want to just mention that that's where we're headed. The last thing, and then we'll go again first to David, is when we come back to the first question, which I'm going to delay for a bit. It's about alternative sites in your communities, whichever community you happen to be in. We want to know what those are. We are taking down that information. There is a form actually up on the, so it's a very short subset of information on the webpage that we circulated. And so but they need to be, sorry, at least an acre, flat or near flat. We have to have that site control or a willing landlord and accessible public street. So I'm going to stop the share for a minute. I did want to say we should now have switched to the regular room. And David, before you unmute, I just want to tell folks again, I've mentioned this along the way. There's a couple of things to note. One, it's just Jim and I on this call tonight. We're here to listen to you. We're not able to also spend the time in the chat because then we can't be listening and engaging the people who have raised their hands and have questions. The other thing I'd say is this is a charged or can be an emotional conversation. And so while we know that, we understand that, we just ask both as to us, right, as servants of the public trying to do our best as members of the community, and to each other who have given up time. Please just be mindful and thoughtful about your comments and questions as we go.
Omar, let me also note that, as you mentioned in the beginning, this is the first of 9 meetings, both ones that are in person as well as on Zoom, evening, midday. There's a Saturday meeting. So there are lots of opportunities as well that you've scheduled that's on the website.
Thanks for that, Jim. I appreciate that. And if you are able to copy and paste that the link into the website, that would be, or into the chat, that would be super helpful. I'll try to do it myself as well. David, so we're going to go to you. We'll take a few of the hands that are up. I've tried to keep writing down. Once we get past Kirti, I'm going to get a little shaky on whose hand went up first. So please just bear with me. But David Sampson, please go ahead.
In District 10. Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can.
Hi, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm here on behalf of some of the community members in District 2 and District 10. I'm sure they can speak for themselves too. We met with Councilmember Jimenez from District 2. We met with Councilmember Mann from District 10. Parts of District 10 recently were part of District 2. So there seems to be a strong density of these projects in our communities very close to housing. We understand the need for these types of projects to try to help end homelessness. There's just a concern about density. The sites are selected and if they can be further equitably distributed throughout neighborhoods of different districts. And I think one of the biggest concerns is even if we know that these sites to exist in certain areas, what will change in city policy to have effective enforcement? Once people get out of different areas and into these safer environments, what is going to prevent the existing places that they came from filling in with RVs or filling in with additional entrance? What's the city going to do to enforce and prioritize existing policy and have radius around these areas so that it doesn't further fill in with more people. That's my two main points. Thank you.
Okay. So David, I did get the point, the question that was, what is the city going to do to ensure that other other people, other vehicles, other things like that don't move close to a location that is established. So I'm gonna respond to that one, and then if you don't mind, I'm gonna move on because it was breaking up a bit, and I think the answer to that one is still a little bit to be determined, but it's useful to bear in mind a couple of things. Well, one is I had a slide about clean, safe, secure, supportive, and trauma informed, and I think that those things are important. We are already continuing to deepen our work with San Jose Police Department around sites. We have, it turns out that at least at one of the emergency interim communities that we were able to get data for, that crime in the area actually went down after that site went up. And so I think that the answer, David, to the question is that the city council will be taking up additional options for, we'll say safeguards to reassure community members. We as staff will be vetting those and helping them understand the impacts, right? Because sometimes there are trade-offs of something that seems like a good idea in terms of implementation. When you actually do it, it sort of creates an issue elsewhere. And in all of what we do, we'll really be focused on upping the ante on preventing people from experiencing homelessness, because, and this is, we didn't really get to this during the lead-in period, but a big part of the problem that we don't get to talk about that much is everybody sees the crisis. They say, oh man, what's happening? What we don't realize is a big part of what's happening is new people are becoming homeless. And we have to bring that number down so that we're actually housing more than enter the system. So that's a big part of what we're going to do. And I will just mention that Jim just put the link to the website for those that didn't see it in the chat. So for anybody that wants to see, there's a site form that you can use. Let me see, there's a few more people waiting to get in. And now I'm going to go. So the long and short to David's question is the city council is going to be calling for evaluating more options around, we'll call them safeguards or considerations, but also it's important for folks to know where we have existing emergency and interim housing communities. We are not seeing the concerns. We're not seeing people moving to those locations. So that's just information to answer your question. I think that I had
the question.
Yeah, David, what I said was, it's because your phone is breaking up so much. I want, and there's so many hands up. It's not coming through well, and so I was able to answer that.
I can relay the question. I think the part that David was mentioning was about density around District 2 and District 10. That was the first part of his question.
Oh, thanks, Arlie. Yeah, I think that the question. So the best way that I can answer that is that there's a sort of a division of the way.
Sorry, I kept cutting out. Are you able to hear me?
No, I mean, I heard you say, "Are you able to hear me?" But not the thing. I think Artie may have just covered your point about.
Okay,
David, I'm going to ask you to mute because there's 50 people in here. So I'm sorry that the connection is not working, but I really
go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. So the bottom line, what I was getting at, Artie's point, which I think was the density question, is just bear in mind that there's a policy call, right, that our city council and mayor will make about, like, how much do we need to meet the need, and what is the direction on where and how that's going to work. And then there's the execution and implementation, where we as staff say, okay, there are, as I mentioned earlier, over 5,000 people living outside, right, on the streets. And we need to come up with ways to deal with that, and ways to help people not live in that way, which is not good for them, not good for people in homes. So the answer, Artie, is and I apologize if I don't have your name quite perfectly, is that the city council, when they come back to address, right, the policy around how close one location is to another, They will help frame out that policy, and then we as staff will really be responsible for moving forward to figure out what the right ways to do that is. So I don't have a concrete on that yet, but we will be focusing on that as we move forward. Getting to understanding what's going to work in a given community. And the reality is it may not be the same in like community X or community Y based on the geography, based on like what's around the building, right? Like there are different considerations. So I want to go to, I think it's Jin, and I apologize if I've said that wrong.
Yeah, you said it perfect. So hi, I'm Shin. I'm from the Salamoni Court. So it's like across the street to the King Road alternatives location. So we have the same concern, like the density of the resident there, and that is a community where there's a many child, there's a many elders live there. On top of that, there already emergency interim housing like very nearby. It's at the Maybury Road near the bar station. What is not making the situation better actually. Before that, there's no homeless, but now there's a many homeless come to our community. They like take a nap at my house porch, and they just try to have some food at the side of my garage. So now the situation is getting worse and worse, even though we have a 100 bed near the Maybury Road across the street. And on top of that, why the alternative location is so close to the residential area and even to a daycare, right? And the Noble is close to the elementary school, right? It doesn't make sense, right? So whatever you said, make it better, I don't see it. Only what I see is like the situation is getting worse and worse. And based on your presentation, so you provide all the services, and but those services is you have to, let's say each area has one, and you have to distribute to those, and there will be a cost, right? So why should we just keep it in the downtown area? So you have the food bank, there's a church can help them, and there's a many services. And also, as you mentioned, there's a many people without home, they have a mental disease, right? So you need to keep them in the working distance with the treatment of the mental disease, because keeping it far away doesn't make sense, right? So how do you expect them with a mental problem, they take a bus, they take a shuttle to the hospital to receive the treatment and come back? And also I heard the emergency interim housing will have at least one security in case they are fighting with each other. But that's all inside, right? Once they outside, then
Shin,
yeah.
I hear you, and I want to respond to a few of those questions, and then make time for some more of your neighbors, because there's several folks that have their hands up. Jerry, I'm going to come.
Yeah, sure.
So Shin, a couple of things to mention. One is that alternative site. We as staff were asked to come to bring forward sites that actually were that met a certain set of guidelines, right? And we put those guidelines, you can find those on the website that is in the chat thread. I share that to say, in a community as built out as much of San Jose is, in a community that has schools or all manner of uses in all parts of the city, it can be really, really hard, right? There's no sort of magic site. We built on 4 of them. It's just, I share that just to say, part of the challenge is that there's going to be something about any location that we find that is going to be a challenge. And so then the question becomes, well, what is going to work within the context of those challenges? And so as to the King site that you're asking about, that's not one that the city council has said go forth and erect on that site. So I want to just say that it's one of the alternatives that's out there, and there will be more of these conversations and more return to the city council. So there's several more opportunities, to make sure of that. And I will make sure that your comments and the rest that we get today are communicated back to all of our elected leaders, my boss and our bosses in the city manager's office, that we really do take those to heart. A couple of other things before I go to Jerry, though. You had asked a couple of things. One, the question about security or safety outside of the emergency interim homes. I mentioned that for those that are maybe joined later, that we have actually seen at least at one location a decrease in the sort of rate of crime the year before there was a site and the year that it's been up. So I just would say, we're continuing to work closely with our San Jose Police Department colleagues around more than just the actual location. And that's true, frankly, in all parts of the city, where we're really trying to engage our police and engage people in the types of things that will prevent criminal activity, that will prevent some of the challenges that you may be experiencing. So I guess I would say, as to the core question, just as I had mentioned to Artie's previous question, the issue of density and where the locations actually do end up, that's sort of, it's a policy call based on the best information that our leaders have to work with. And we as staff are really doing our best to take in more feedback from you all about alternative sites in whichever community that we're working with. So those are a couple of answers, Jen. And I'm going to ultimately put, you probably all have it or may have it, my email in the chat, so that you can reach out. And this doesn't have to be a one and done. There are, I think 9 more of these sessions. We're not publicizing them, but it's useful for you to know that in terms of going to the community, one of the things that is important for us to do is to go to the whole community. So we will be having a few sessions where we go into encampments and ask people in encampments where, what sites are you more or less likely to use? And before I go to Jerry, the one thing I'll say, Shin, that's important to know is one of the reasons, and this is probably good for everybody generally to know, one of the reasons that we don't go put like all of the resources in one particular area for the whole city is we have a pretty spread out city. And if somebody was born and raised on the east side or born and raised on the west side, and they're now experiencing homelessness, very often, and we've had these conversations with people, that's where they want to be. And so, the Constitution says people have a right to be outside, at least at the last Supreme Court, the Ninth Circuit ruled. And so if we put all the services where people won't use them, then they won't get used. And the things that we want to have happen, connect people to services, not have, unclean or unhealthy neighborhoods, won't get there. So Jim, there's a couple of answers for you. I will just remind everybody, because it's just Jim and I, we're not able to engage in the chat. It's okay to post things there, but just know that we're not able to answer questions there. Jerry, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
First off, Omar and Jim, you don't get paid enough for going through this right now, but I will say that we appreciate your input. My first question is, if you had to look at all the districts, and let me ask first, how many homes are you trying to supply? And out of those districts, if you could share with me, how many of those districts have the most homes that you're going to try to provide housing for?
That was it sounds like you have a 2 or 4 or 5 parter. So I want to be sensitive to your neighbors, but I will say this, the current goal is 1,000 across the entire city. And so that's sort of spread out across various districts. Where's my little notepad here? We have some sites right now that have 40 units and 82 units and 78 units. And so we're looking to be in that 60 to 100 range, because we're seeing that the service providers can support and provide people the ability that they need to be safe there. And there's not some of the disturbances, like Shin was asking about people fighting, that's not really something that is materializing. So that's the answer to that part. I'll let you get one more question in, Jerry, then I want to make sure to go, because there's a lot of other hands up.
Yeah, I guess my question would be, if you had to classify District 2 and District 10, how many of those homes would be allocated? And what is your actual process to classify people to, in other words, what's temporary? how do you vet that and determine the application process for that? So my main question is, out of all the districts, how many are in District 2 and District 10?
So, wait, you said districts 2 and 10?
I believe it's 2 and 10, right? Great Oaks area is 10, correct?
Yeah. No, I just want to make sure I understood your question. I believe at the moment that there are 2. I'm looking for my
Does
map.
that include the RVs too? In
I'm
Santa Teresa?
going to ask Jim to jump in real quick here.
Yeah, so there are 6 bridge housing community sites and emergency room housing. Bridge housing was the prototype, and we have 2 of those. One off of Mayberry Road, it's about 40 units. One that is in central San Jose near 680 101 on Felipe. That's about 40 units as well. We have one that is at Monterey and Burnell. That's the video that Omar showed. That's 78 units. We have one that is at Rue Ferrari. That has a smaller number of units, but it's built so couples can be together. And that has about 118 beds. And then there is a family shelter at Evans Lane. That's our largest one. That can accommodate about 122 people in those. So those are the 6 locations that we've currently developed. And we have direction to develop 6 more total locations. One is in construction now up by the police department near Highway 87, the Guadalupe facility. And that one will have about 76 units. And then we have the others that are now in kind of the proposed pipeline that the council considered last month, and that have more outreach to do on. And those are the ones that we're also taking in potential for alternative sites. Those locations are the Noble site that we've heard about tonight, the 85 at Great Oaks site, the Jackson and 680 site, and the Prospect and 85 site, and then an expansion project at the Guadalupe site. We're going to add more units there, and then some expansion at Rue Ferrari as well. So those are the locations, kind of north, east, central, south, and west San Jose. There are locations throughout our city.
And so just sorry, Jerry, I want to make sure. So that's the general answer, and we can happily follow up. But you have 11 fellow San Joseans who also have questions. So I want to be cautious of the time. Is there one quick follow up before we move to the next person?
Basically just concerned about the density within a mile or 2 radius of all of the sites, including the RV in this area of 85 and Great Oaks. That's my concern, which I think should be considered. Okay.
Yeah, thank you for that, Jerry.
It's I mean, that's a similar concern raised by a couple of your neighbors, and we've made note. We'll be sure that we share that, and that we are able to consider. So I am sort of muting hands as we go. I'm lowering hands. If you've asked the question, go ahead and lower. Kirti, please go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, thanks a lot, Omar and Jim, for doing this outreach. I encourage you to please look at the satellite pictures and live site pics of sites like the Bernal Road site. They don't reflect the video you just played. The video you played looks like a home that's staged for selling. There doesn't seem to be a single soul around such dense group of houses next to each other. No sign of human life there. But the larger point is that the use of the term emergency by the city is disingenuous. On the one hand, you claim an emergency of a large number of people that are homeless, but you are okay to situating these people in parks and recreation areas such as the Noble site. And you will not consider any alternate site less than 1 acre on non-slopes, and they all should be in a certain configuration and shape. If it's truly an emergency, you should consider all places, apartments, warehouses, churches, and whatnot, not just where you can construct only one kind of home. The change of the ranking criteria to choose parks and these percolation points to reflect this non-emergencies, just creating like an urban sprawl without concern to existing residential areas that are right next to the schools.
So, Kirti, thanks for sharing that. And I do genuinely mean thank you for sharing it. I think there's maybe additional color that I would add, but I don't think that it is meant to like disavow the perspective that you're offering, right? So I can tell you, because I was personally there at the site, that it wasn't staged for anybody, right? It's just people basically just stay in their little units. There's a much higher proportion of people who are experiencing homelessness who have physical disabilities, so they tend to just not move nearly as much as people might think. So that video, it's not staged, it's not a come on, that doesn't do anybody any good if we kind of like make it up. As for the notion of which properties that we consider, I think the thing, and again, this is just context. Doesn't mean that we're right because we're saying it, right? We spend a lot of time on this, but it doesn't mean we have magic crystal balls or we're always going to get it right. But just context for you, which is that the sort of competing priority of saying, well, what would it be if we looked at, XYZ type of other site? There's costs associated with that acquisition and the construction and maybe even the use on a church property or some of these other properties. It doesn't rule them out. We didn't actually put a requirement in the alternative site form that it be just a vacant piece of city-owned land or publicly owned land. If there's a congregation with a large piece of property and they're really willing to engage and motivated, like that's a conversation worth having. And so, I mean, as I mentioned, coming from San Diego County, we actually did have that conversation with one congregation who was going to put 60 units on their church because that is massive parking lot. So I just want to say, Kirti, and to everybody that's listening, it's still, we'll put the link back up so that you have it. There are potentially other sites that can help us meet the need that we're trying to meet. So there is an opening there, but it is a crisis level. So I just want to say that. And I think the next hand that I've got is, it looks like, and I apologize, Sudansu.
Yeah, thanks, Omar. Thanks for organizing this. I would like to further the point which Kirti made is about the criteria, how the city council came up with this criteria, because looking at this criteria, it is basically missing a lot of very important parameters. One of them, I would say, the sensitivity of the place. Current criteria does not even differentiate between a school, hospital, burial ground, anything. And we had in past a law which actually prohibited to build homeless encampments at least 100 feet of the elementary school. And that's our biggest problem in Noble, that the Noble is 32 feet. Noble Elementary is 32 feet from the location which you're planning to propose. And I understand everything looks really hunky-dory when you start, when everybody is willing to take credit about it, correct? But as things deteriorate, nobody is asking about the site anymore. What will happen? The trash will start to come up. And how things will go if things go really bad. Next to a school is a place where you have one of the weakest human beings, the people who needs to have a very secure environment are there. And in that place, you are just setting up these tiny homes. And I understand that Mayor is suggesting that, oh, you guys will try to prioritize some sort of people you bring in this location, like senior people or family. And we are good with that. But the problem is it a law? Is it really something which we can sue the city on if city does not follow? And what is the parameter? I can understand a senior. What defines a senior? What defines a family? And also, are you gonna make sure that there's no drug abuse history or mental history with these sort of people? Because if you're mixing these sort of people with children, it is really, really really bad mix, correct? I don't need to explain to you however big the emergency is. You don't want to make children victim of such any unknown any really bad situation, correct? I know there's mental people, drug abuse, you can't put safety or an SGPD all the time to control them, correct? If something goes wrong with the children, who will be the responsible for this sort of condition, correct?
So,
And that's what is our major problem with
Yeah.
this proposed site.
so Sudhanshu, it sounds like for you, and thanks for making the point, we're lodging the point that the closeness to the school is a concern for you, at the Noble site. So we've heard that and are making sure to sort of record that. And this session will be, again, recorded and posted to the website. I think it's probably helpful for folks to know, take the Noble site or any of the proposed current sites out of the equation for just a moment. It's just useful as a general matter. Folks may not be aware of this, that like most people who have a substance use problem also have a home. And most people who have mental illness also have a home, which is just to say, it isn't the fact of there's a lot of very nuanced sort of two-way causality. And so we have to deal with creating safe spaces with supportive services that do protect communities and protect people. And we're trying to do both of those things. And so I think the one thing I would reiterate is, if for any of you who feels like one of the current selections is a bad location, right? Not everybody will want to do this. That's okay. I am just saying the option is open to you to, maybe you have a congregation that has a large parking lot. Maybe you are yourself own a large piece of property and you say, oh, you know what? I would be willing to do this. We want to hear from you. So to Sudhanshu's point, maybe there are still other locations. That is something that the mayor and council authorized us to go and get more information on. And we started a few weeks ago and have already started getting some sites to evaluate. And we'll be going through that process for several more weeks. So Sudhanshu, I appreciate that. I made the note about that. I want to go ahead and go to your another.
Omar, I have a follow-up on that. I think in past you just
real
said
quick,
like,
because you have 9 other neighbors that want to.
yeah, this will be really quick. You said we have experience with running other facilities and we know how it works on a resident or community, but I don't think you have a experience with running next to elementary school or a children's playground, correct? And how those two things will combine, you don't know. And the second point where you said, oh, people can be in the residential area who have drug abuse history or mental issues. But when you put 100 of them in one place, you increase the probability of something going wrong 10 times or 20 times, correct? Yeah, obviously anything can go wrong anywhere, but if you concentrate them, things are going to.
I'm sorry to cut you off. I want to make sure to get your neighbors in, but I want to clarify a couple things. I actually did not say that we have experience operating emergency interim homes next to schools, just that we have the experience of the ones that are currently operating. That's as far as I said. I want to be clear about that. And it isn't the case that those other sites that everybody who shows up, who gets in and gets situated, either does or doesn't have one specific health condition or another. There are lots of people who are experiencing homelessness, who are, I mean, I hate to say it like this, but just poor, like just cannot afford this very expensive community. And so we all see that it's a very sort of like normal phenomenon, I think, human phenomenon, to walk down the street or see TV and you see a certain thing, you think this is everybody who's on the street, this experience I'm seeing right here. And it's just broader than that. So while I like I said, we're going to make note of the point that you're making and really are open to these other locations. I just also want folks to recognize that there are many people in our community who are not, they're almost out of sight, but they still are in desperate need. So I just wanted to say that, and I appreciate those comments, Sudhanshu. And I want to go to a Noble resident now.
Oh, hi. Thanks, Omar. I actually have a few requests for information to be placed on the website, and thank you for sharing the link. I was unable to find it prior to tonight. So for the first request, the Thursday in-person Berryessa library meeting. Supposedly, we're supposed to fill out an RSVP form, and on the city calendar, when you go there and you click on the link to the calendar item, there is a link to click on for the reservation. However, it doesn't go anywhere.
No, so
On-
I'm gonna, sorry, just, I hate to cut you off. If I could see your face, I would try to like, be careful about when I jumped in. I want to say this though, just for everybody that's here. You do not have to go onto any city reservation form. All you have to do, and it should be on the page where it says it, is just email EIH outreach at sanjoseca.gov. And I will tell you, like, and I will put that in the chat. Tons of people have done that. Like, so, and I don't know what the disconnect might be, and I apologize if we made it unclear.
What, by tons, can you give me a number? I
don't
mean,
have it off the top of my head, but
I'm
we're
someone
not
who
gonna-
deals
We're
with,
not gonna, sorry, we're not gonna do that. I don't have that number off the top of my head. If you have a
okay.
question,
I really appreciated you the other night being at the meeting that you were at the community center. I am not a person that's pushy or anything like that. So I'm really not wanting a response. I'm just going to ask for some things. The second thing that I'm wondering is I just want to make sure that I'm looking at the correct guidelines. So I need a published date for the guidelines or for the guidelines to be posted on your website. I think the one that I'm looking at, and it says draft across it, is from 2017, which might be the most recent, but I'm not quite sure. So if we could get that posted. And then you mentioned that a site or a community that has one of the EIHs in it saw a decrease in crime. So I'd like the study that pointed to the EIH as being the driver of that decrease posted also to the website. And then the last thing that I'm going to request is that any data be posted to your website on the outcomes of the different compounds that the EIHs that we've got around. Any data, just outcomes of the folks that have been there, how long have they stayed. We hear and we've been hearing, but we've not seen data published. That's really, I think, one of the things that we need. And I believe that there's opportunities for volunteering at these sites. And I think that that's on the City of San Jose website. Can you confirm that?
Not at the moment, but I will, and we'll add it to the we'll add it to the website. I'm not sure where the volunteer space is, so we'll figure that out. And I will, just for everybody's sake, and then I'm going to go to the next person again. So this is not about a back and forth. This is just some of your questions are useful, almost like softballs to the whole group, so I can tell everybody something. So I appreciate it. Actually, the guidelines that Noble resident just asked about are currently on that web page that we mentioned earlier that Jim had put in the chat. And so we'll make sure, again, if you send a note to EIH outreach at sanjoseca.gov or go to the website if you have it, or just reach out to me. I mean, any number of ways. We want to make it as easy as possible for you to stay informed on an ongoing basis, but that's one. So we got that request before and did put that on the site. So thank you for that. I want to go now. I'm going to try to get to a handful more folks, because there's quite a few folks still here that are waiting. And then I'm going to actually try to ask one of the questions that we had intended to pose. So I'm going to go to Ty Greaves.
Thank you, Omar. First of all, you're new to the game, so I'm not going to hold this on you, but the process was woeful. We've had nothing. And all of a sudden, the city council makes the decision, and now you get an explosion of opposition. And all of a sudden, 9 meetings get scheduled. Wonderful. Second point, an earlier comment as to selection criteria. Your selection criteria is simplistic. You want it to be flat and you want it to be 100, an acre or more, rather than what about services? Where is the population? The last thing I saw was 15% of the homeless population was in District 4. It seems like you're pointing in the wrong direction. You need to look at your criteria much more carefully. The comment made earlier that this is an emergency, I again draw the distinction that it's less than 0.1% that we're talking about, but it's driving public policy. So we get this situation where you tell us that it's a constitutional right for people to live wherever they want to on the streets, because that's where they want to live. But our opinions don't seem to count quite as much. And last thing, when you post that data, post it as success per $1 million spent, because the city and county, Santa Clara and San Jose are spending a boatload of money to marginal success.
Yeah, Ty, thank you for those comments, Ty. A couple of things I want to be clear about. One that just goes back to the prior thing. I actually did not say that the EIH community caused crime to go down, only that it did actually go down. I think it's a bridge too far to attribute reductions in crime in most places to almost anything. I'm not a criminologist, and so I wouldn't profess to have the knowledge to make that kind of claim. So I can't post data that I don't have. So just so everybody knows, I'm not saying that a community necessarily caused a drop in crime, only that it happened. Right, those two things happen. So the notion, sometimes people will say, "Oh, this will cause a crime to grow up," and we don't know for sure in any given area, but we have that piece of information to share. So, and Ty, I hear you about that last point you made, right? The cost benefit. That's not an unreasonable point. Like, we should be evaluating what the cost for success actually is. I think that's something that I'm going to make sure we make a note of and come back with. The prior point, I didn't mention this when Noble Resident said it, but it's a very good point. The notion of sharing like the outcome data we have, right? At least pulling it together and making sure that it's a good idea. It's one we got to take back in and figure out, like, how do we do it right and do it well. So I'm just making a note of that. As for the notion of all of a sudden we have nine meetings. The one thing I want folks to know, and then I want to go to the next person so that we get through a few more folks. And then at about 8:45, I want to pose a question actually that I will sort of break my own rule and put it in the chat so people can see it. But the one other thing I did want to mention though is part of what has changed and allowed for 9 meetings is that the city hired an additional human being in me. And I just came from doing a very similar thing in communities across the unincorporated parts of San Diego County. So it's not that like it was all of a sudden, it literally had to hire somebody, and they have been trying for a while, to add capacity. So now I'm part of the team, one of the many who wants to do right by the community, both housed and unhoused. And so we're just trying to work together to get there. And I will reiterate, maybe there's another location in these other communities, right, that might meet the need. The mayor and council identified a need, and that's what we're really trying to respond to. So Ty, thanks for those points. I actually think they will help strengthen what we provide and how we think about it. I'd like to go to Vicky Kao.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me? I'm Isaac. I actually started using my Wise phone.
Oh.
I just want to say one thing. I can tell you that I speak for many in our community. I'm going to include a couple of associations. We have Rancho Santa Teresa, we have the Palmilla, we have the Green Association, Avenue 1, California Grove, Urban Oaks, Station 121, and the list goes on and on. And we are all connected. And we are very unhappy with the way things are. You guys keep talking about equitable distribution, and most of these projects are happening in District 2 and District 10. And most of the homeless are allocated to this project. Just right now, it was mentioned that Monterey and Bernal has 78 beds, and Rue Ferrari has 118. And excluding that's what's coming in, that's a vast majority of the 600 beds that you are currently planning to bring to our neighborhoods. Nobody's against the homeless. All it is, our community has been burdened enough with all these projects. The city of San Jose is a big city. There's no need to put all of them in a 2-3 miles radius. Omar, you say you want to do us right. This is the time to act. This is the time to go back to the city council and have them reconsider these decisions. And I wanna also tell you the frustration with Councilman Sergio. All these projects happened while he was having district before the redistricting, and he did not take any of our feedbacks. Thousands reached out to him, and he ignored us. Thousands, and that's a big deal. And I wanna say also one more thing. I want to bring up, for example, the RV station on Santa Teresa. This RV station, I'm not sure who selected that location. It is near 4 elementary schools and 1 middle school and lots of daycares. This is, and the question that the community keep asking, and I'm telling you thousands, Omar, thousands. Who can we hold accountable if one of the children get hurt? We need a name. Who is it? Is it you right now because you are running this show, or is it the city manager? Who would be held accountable? If you want to do us right, be fair. Our district 2 and 10 got enough. It's time to somebody look into it. You were brought in to help, so do your job and help. Go take this feedback back to the city council. Have them re-vote on, for example, the RV station in Santa Teresa, which is near 4 elementary schools and 1 middle school. And we keep using the police. You have like 11 officers for 100,000 people. Please stop using the police. They don't have the resources, and this is a little bit. I feel bad for the police. Enough using them. They cannot do much. They don't have the resources.
I want to jump in. You have several neighbors that have been waiting patiently. I do hear the concerns about your council office and about the concentration. And I think several of your colleagues and neighbors in the community have raised that point, and we hear that point. I think that I just want to reiterate. Great. I think you're getting to. I'll just do that. So the point about density and equitable distribution is something that we hear. So I want to make sure that you know that. I think one of the things to be mindful of is we have people on this call right now, some who are in District 2 or District 10, some who are in District 4, right? There may be people in other parts of the city. My point is, our goal is to hear as much as we can, not just about what's wrong and what the problems are and what the challenges are with locations, but again, the city council gave us this great opportunity to work with the community. And Ty, I hear you that you as I said in the lead-in, like we as a team of city, and that's myself included, we apologize that we didn't have that first. Are there reasons? Sure, right? But the point is it didn't happen. And now I'm just here to say, like, hey, we do need to have this more outreach. And the city council actually gave us the opportunity to say, let's see if there are other sites that will work in these communities. Maybe it's further away, there are any number of things. So I just want to reiterate that the opportunity exists. As we switch to Sinran.
Yep, you're pronouncing it right. Thank you. So yeah, I'm a resident in the Urban Oak community, which is right next to the Great Oaks exit of Highway 85, and I'm also living in a neighborhood where we, with the proposed EIH size, we already currently have 2 EIH sites in districts 2 and 10 within 1 mile of my home. And there's also 2 proposed safe parking sites within 1 mile of my home. And with the additional 1 EIH site proposed, there will be 5. And then in that area, we'll be hosting 600 beds. And my concern is really to say that I think this density within the area is very unfair. And my request for you and for the city is really to seriously consider not putting the EIH site at the 85 Great Oaks location. And also in addition, I really want to see some transparency and also actions to share a list of alternative sites that the city will be considering to more evenly distribute the EIH sites rather than clump everything in this 2 miles diameters. So yeah, and this concern is shared by many neighbors in my neighborhood, and some of them might not be able to join this meeting, but I definitely want to voice my concern.
Okay. Shimran, I want to thank you for voicing that concern. I made sure to note what it was that you had to say, especially about the density consideration. One question for you, just out for my own knowledge, in relation to that Great Oaks, are you on the same side as there's a like a bridge or an overpass kind of right there? I think it's called
Right.
Xander's Pass. Are you on the same side as the Great Oaks or on the opposite side?
We're on the Costco side.
Okay, thanks. Just for information. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Before I go to the next, I want to just sort of reiterate sort of a large level point for folks. You may remember, those that joined late may not have seen this, the slide where we talked about there being over 5,000 people who are living on the street in the city of San Jose right now. That's a bare minimum, 5,031. I share that just to say, we are talking about a goal of getting to 1,000, units for people. And the reason I want to mention this, it's really important. Let's forget just for the next 15 seconds, all the sites we're considering, right? It's say there were magic sites and we got to 1,000. Even if we just kept pace, that would still be 4,000 people on the streets. And so one of the questions that we need to grapple with is, what do we do? Right, we are trying, and don't get me wrong, we are working on prevention strategies that are working, right? But 2,000 people, they're just not enough yet, right? But I guess the point is, what we saw is a decrease in unsheltered homeless by virtue of doing these things, right? So it decreased that suffering. I just want to share that because when we talk about concentrations, we're still talking about 20% of the overall need in the community right now. And so one of the things we're like, 15 minutes from the end. Again, for everybody, there will be several more of these. I just, can you mute Deval, please? I just want to say that for those of you who may come back for others of these sessions, or just want to engage in the longer, larger conversation, the plain reality is we kind of need more of people who are willing and interested to engage, because this is a massive problem that impacts everybody. It impacts people who are on the streets. It impacts neighbors who at almost 9 o'clock at night, who would normally be, with your kids or your families or whatever else you might want to do. I'm not, like Jim and I are aware and sensitive to that. So I just wanted to say, I wanted to reiterate the scope of the issue in hopes that there may be some folks who are listening who say, you know what, that's a good point. I'm going to go try to see if I can find another site, or I want to engage in a longer term. So I'm just mentioning that. It doesn't discount anything that anybody has said so far. So Shimran, I'm going to put your hand down and go to VP.
Yeah, thanks for giving me an opportunity, and thanks for the meeting, Omar. I was just curious, you pretty much know what we have in mind, right? Even if we have 900 meetings or 9 more meetings, it's going to be the same. I mean, we have problems. So why not just, if you really want to regard our opinion, why not just come up with a rule saying that we won't have these tiny homes in a radius of 3 miles from a community, because every community has kids, every community is vulnerable, every community has similar kind of problems, right? So what is the point in holding so many meetings, and it'll be more like an eyewash, right?
So VP, I'll say that there's a couple of answers to what's the point of hosting so many meetings. One is there's 1 million people in the city of San Jose, and folks have busy lives. So there will be people who could not come tonight who want to have this same conversation, who didn't know some of the things that we talked about. You have neighbors on this call who didn't know there was a website with certain information already there. Part of our job as representatives of the city is to make this information available. Now, the question about Well, we think that, this is what everybody wants, right? And so we should just, not have meetings. I guess I would say, we're going through this process so that everybody has a chance, not just to say, hey, I don't like it, I don't want it, I don't like the process. Those are all valid concerns. And as I said, we're making note of those concerns. But there will be people who also say, who walk away from tonight and they go and they're like, I actually do know a property. I have a colleague or what have you. That's important for us, right? There will be people on this call who walk away from this, maybe still thinking, I don't think Noble's a great site, or I don't think Great Oaks is a great site. But man, I did not realize how many people are on the street, and now I want to engage in a different kind of way. So I would just say that I think that if as members of a community, the least that I can do is be here, right? And if it's 9 times or whatever else, then that's the way it's going to be. So I don't think it's a waste of time to spend this time hearing from folks. So I appreciate that, but that's why we would do so many, is the answer to that. I'm going to go to Oscar.
Hello?
Yes, Oscar.
Hi, yes. So I'd like to know if you guys are gonna, at the end, like publish a list of all the sites considered and kind of a ranking, if you guys are gonna share that information. That's one thing. And then also, I think the Noble site is kind of getting into precedent of like it's taking away city park land. And then as other people mentioned, it's very close to a school across the street. And so I just wanted to, I believe there should be some setback rules, just like that was in 2017, for that should be just put in place so that for any future sites considered. So yeah, and then also you talked about people turning in suggestions. Like what date would you say those suggestions should be in by?
So we started collecting about 10 days ago. I have to double check for the exact date, but by August 15th, so there's about 3 more weeks, I think, to submit those. The guidelines that we published and the little form that's on the site, it's simplistic, not because we aren't considering other criteria, but because we didn't think it was reasonable to ask neighbors to become like land surveyors and real estate professionals, right, if they weren't already. And so it's just the basic criteria that our team needs, or the basic guidelines that our team needs to do a deeper evaluation. So that's posted. Oscar, that last part was just, there was another question about that. So that's earlier, so it gave me a chance to mention that. It's not that those are the only guidelines, but we didn't want to ask community members to complete a triplicate form 30-question questionnaire just to submit an option. So that's the answers. You got 3 weeks. The other thing you mentioned, the list of sites and rankings. On the lead-in, I said a couple of things. One was I would answer every question that I could. And the other was if I didn't know the answer or I couldn't at the moment, I would just tell you that. And Oscar, this is one of those times. I actually don't know, as we sit here today, the answer to that question. If we'll be having a list that is rank ordered, or how that will look, and whether we'll be able to post it or at what time. Now, I want to be clear. I think I can find that out and post it to the website so that you know. And then if the answer is yes, we'll be able to do that. We'll just say when it's all going to be there. I just don't know right now. So I think if you're the same, Oscar, we've been in contact a bit. I just know that I'll keep on that one, and we'll make sure to identify how you will be able to get that information.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and then just I mean, I know this Noble site is new for setting the precedent of being taking away city park land and being next to a school and kind of engulfed in a residential area. So I think those 3 things, it's getting into new territory of putting these sites. So I just wanted to raise a big concern on that.
Okay. Thank you for that, Oscar. I think we're going to go to, it looks like SS Guest. SS. I might have put SS to sleep. I apologize. I'm kidding. We'll come back to SS. We're going to go to Danya. Uh-oh. Maybe my thing isn't working. Danya, is that you? Hello? Am I frozen? Okay, I'm not frozen. Danya, are you there? I don't think let's go to, let's see. Arti?
Hey, I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, actually, first of all, thanks for taking the time and talking to us. And I'll reiterate the same question other residents had in District 2 and 10. We see the density of all this public program is higher. Like, do we have a criteria? Can we add a criteria where density of all these programs is taken into consideration before selecting a site? Like, you need not even do a public outreach for this. City can already look at all the existing programs, look at how many housing they have already provided and its density, and could have removed this site altogether.
Yeah. Arti, I'm going to answer that question, and my answer might be a little bit. There's many more questions here. A little bit unsatisfying, and I just want to be straight with you. The reality is that, like, the city of San Jose has a fixed boundary, and you have to. And there is already several places that are not possible for no other reason than, you know, the topography, or there's a permanent restriction because of a state law or something like that. So there's a bunch of land that comes off the table right away. And then the question becomes, well, what do we have left? And what is the thing we're trying to do? Now, ideally, we'll get to a place where we're preventing more homelessness, which hopefully we'll work on more together and as a community. And then we won't be in this boat. But one of the challenges behind the type of hard and fast rule of saying there will not be more than X units of Y type within a certain distance is that it doesn't account for the sort of on the ground physical realities. That does not mean, and I want to be clear about this, that does not mean that in the area that we're talking about, right around the Great Oak site, that there might not be a compelling reason to look elsewhere. I'm just saying that part of the challenge of just having a blanket might be that there may be some parts of the city where what you're describing as a concentration isn't something that people are opposed to. And so what we need to do is, again, we're going to bring all of these comments back and make sure that your representatives, that our colleagues are aware of them. But I just wanted to share that because sometimes we might lose sight of the notion that what we're trying to do is to address a citywide problem with a fixed amount of space to do it in. So that again, that's not to discount what you said. I heard you, and we will make sure to dial that in. I just wanted to share that context for you to have a sense of like what, you know, I and Jim and Jackie and others in the city, the process of trying to figure this out. So thanks for that, Arti. I want to double back real quick. Actually, I'll go to.
Hey, I just like to add to your answer that you added. Thank you for answering that. But it looks like there are state laws which is prohibiting everywhere, and until the residents protest, you will just keep adding to the density. That's the council's idea currently, that until the residents protest, we will not even look at the density as a criteria and we'll just keep adding more.
No, so here's the thing. So I'm not in a position to speak for the city council, right? Like I'm just sharing with you the notion that having an absolute prohibition based on you know, some level of density, whatever that was established to be, creates other problems that might be that might limit a part of the community where that issue is not an issue, where somebody says. So that's all I'm saying. I just wanted to.
I mean, it goes against what you said in the beginning of the meeting, where you said you don't want to dislocate the homeless people from different part of the city to a different part of the city. Now, if the density is higher, does that mean this part of the city has higher homelessness, or are we bringing people from outside this district, inside this district, to support EIH or whatever programs that we are supporting?
Yeah. So, Artie, I'm going to pivot. I know we're at 9:01 now, so I'm going to do a couple things. One, the answer is and with all of these sites, we're really working with our teams to offer these options to people in those communities, right? It's intended to help address the homelessness issues in a given part of the city. So that's the answer to that part of it. But I'm not. It's not all I'm saying. The whole point is just that an absolute prohibition can create some other challenges. That's all. And it's just shared. I want to go really quickly to. There's two more that I'm going to take, and then we're going to call it for tonight. And like I said, we'll be back at it tomorrow and the next day, and several more times. So I'd like to go to Lee Wu, and then we're going to do AV after that, and then we'll call it good for the night. So Lee.
Yeah, thank you, Omar. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So good evening, everybody. I have 2 points. The first point is, please don't get misled. This is not an issue that is the residents versus the homeless, nor homeless versus the residents. It's the human being versus the environment. I think the simple fact is those high density project is not good to the environment. We needed to protect our environment. After all, we only have one Earth. The second point is, Omar, you mentioned that you have been working for the city of San Diego. To be very frank with you, I have just visited San Diego, and the homeless issue there is getting worse. Okay, the homeless issue in San Diego is getting worse. I just came back from San Diego. So now I'm going to post a link of some of the news to show the fact that the street homeless appears to be surging in San Diego. So Omar, please, whatever they have done in San Diego, please don't repeat them in San Jose, because it has been proven that those methods are not working.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. It's maybe worth noting I worked for the county of San Diego, not the city of San Diego, but thank you for sharing the perspective. We're gonna go one last. There was looks like Peter may have gone away. Let's check one more time to see if SS came back before we go. SS or okay.
Sure. Am I audible?
Oh, there we go. Hello.
Sure. Yeah. So I have a question regarding alternative sites, because it is clear from all the entire discussion that Noble, which was sort of created by the self-created criteria, does not fit, and it is going to cause a major disturbance to adjacent neighbors for all the reasons mentioned. Okay, we can go ad infinitum, we can again mention all of them, but I'm sure that you are aware of all the concerns by now. So I want to sort of see how much is the inclination and motivation from your side in selection of alternative sites. And if you mentioned that you have created some, can you go over those alternative sites? And if it's an emergency for those alternative sites, why can't we utilize the other funds to actually get leasing or so on for this alternative sites? So I would like to get your perspective on the alternative sites and your motivation and inclination levels for these.
So what I'd say, thanks for the question. The biggest, the number one question that I had to ask this group, I wasn't able to put it out because I wanted to make space for people to ask their questions, was whether you had alternative sites that you were aware of. I will say that we created a whole website to be able to, among other things, allow people to submit alternative sites. Jim and our team on the production side have already started evaluating those sites. So I would say we take very seriously the notion of people, whether it's community members, we've evaluated. There was one that came in from a neighbor today that we put forward into evaluation. So there are several that have come from council members, et cetera. We are not asking just for the sake of asking. If we can find a location, the mayor and council have directed that that's an okay alternative path. And so as long as we can keep the timeline about the same, that's an acceptable alternative to our elected leaders. And so part of the reason, just as I said to those of you that were present when we were together at Berryessa, I guess a couple of weeks ago, that opportunity exists for us. And so part of what we're trying to do is to facilitate it. So it is maybe a high motivation to get that information and to engage and to hear about these other sites and to vet them through our systems and to figure out whether the floods will get in the way. And having lived in a place where people who are experiencing homelessness were put in a place that was flood prone and it actually did flood, I can just tell you that that can be a real problem. So we've got to work through some of those things. But the answer is we're certainly, like, that's why we're asking, is because we really want to know. So that's the answer to that question. And then
So I just have a follow-up. Like, are there, like, you're soliciting inputs from people, right? But is there a list that you have yourself published somewhere regarding the alternative sites?
Yes, we have.
Yeah,
So on the website, there is a report that went to City Council for the June 21st meeting, and it lists all the sites that we evaluated. It's about 140 public agency-owned sites, and it's listed by City Council district, so you can see all the ones that we've looked at so far.
So, and I want to be clear, because I may have misread that question, and we're gonna, for those that still have hands up, I apologize. We're now 10 minutes past 9 o'clock. Now this was going to end at 9. If you were asking about the alternative sites that we're taking in now, Oscar had a similar question earlier, and I will tell you the same thing that I said to him. I don't know yet if we're going to, like, how or what the mechanism will be for communicating those. I suspect there will be one. I have to find it out. So at the start of this meeting, I said sometimes I wouldn't be able to give you like the answer because I just don't know. This is one of those times. I mean, I know we're evaluating them. The question is just going to be, how do we communicate that information and give you the knowledge that you're looking for? For the sites that were already evaluated, to Jim's point, we put that link right on that same website. So
just to give you my thoughts, like, I think this is an emergency created by out of thin air, that you have created a self-imposed deadline about some sort, and you're trying to sort of just ram through it in certain fashion so that you can get this one done. So my question is, where was this new criteria being created? Why were common sense logic of the criteria to not have close to schools and nearby parks put into place?
I would be happy to continue this conversation. As I said, there are 8 more of these meetings. There's nothing rushed about the roughly 5.
No, I would disagree with that, because you.
Okay, listen, here's the thing. Everybody has been really respectful this entire time. You asked multiple questions. It's now 10 minutes after this meeting was going to end. The only thing that I asked in the whole session, even though we're all like, it's a very charged subject, is just to be mindful that there are other folks, and we're already over time. I will be happy to stay on. I'm going to close down the meeting in just a minute. There will be tomorrow in person, and then again tomorrow evening is at the Southside Community Center. There'll be another one the next day in Berryessa, and then there will be several more, including weekend sessions coming up.
Just 1 minute. 1 minute is one thing I want to mention. It's very, very important. We had a meeting with Councilman Matt Mahan last Saturday. It was a very useful meeting. Just FYI, Matt Mahan voted against bringing the tiny homes to the Great Oaks 85 location, and he actually is considering an alternative location. So please work with him to see what you guys can do. I'm not sure what's the process, but at least he's willing to help the communities. So please, if you can reach out to him. I'm not sure how it works, but please work with him on it.
Do you happen to know, we're going to go ahead and close this meeting down. Do you happen to know, did that site get raised in your meeting?
He mentioned the location was in Almaden, the old VTA station that's currently not used. So I know he wants to help our communities, and he spent time with us last Saturday to discuss this. So I'm sure I know he wants to do it. So please, if possible, talk to him and see what you guys can do to find a solution.
We part of our role is to be in good contact with all of the electeds about this, and so we will make sure to add that to our process, is making sure to take all of the feedback, including from council offices, and And I'm really grateful. As I mentioned, we were joined this evening by the Chief of Staff for Councilmember Cohn from District 4. And it's now almost 15 minutes after this session was going to end. So I'm going to shut it down. I see many of you are still here. And the last thing I'll do, if I can, is just put the EIH outreach email again in the chat for anybody in case you missed it the last time. Make sure I don't have a typo in there. It's a way to just make sure we keep everything all in one place. It just makes it easy to make sure we're managing responses and that sort of thing. We will do this again. The alternative site form is on there. Jim, is there anything you want to add before we?
Somebody's asking about the website again, Omar. Do you want to hold up? Somebody put it out there. So thank you to Ariana who posted it again, responding to Danya. So very good.
And one of the things that we end up doing is just adding anybody who reaches out who wants to be added to the distribution so that you can get any kind of feedback or updates, this kind of thing. We really, I think, want to make sure that folks have the information that they need. So with that, it's almost 9:15. We're going to sign off. Have a good evening, and we'll, like I said, feel free to join in any of the other meetings. All right.